Okay, why don't we get started? This is the last briefing in panel for today before between now and happy hour here in a little bit. So we'll try to keep it on time. But each year we provide an opportunity for you to hear and understand the perspectives of DOE field managers across the complex. I'm Rick Provencher. I'm the CEO for Cavendish Nuclear USA, and we're a fully mitigated company here in the US. We're affiliated with Babcock International Group out of the UK, heavy into the defense industry there in the UK, as well as civil nuclear. But I used to also be a field manager. I was a field manager in Idaho at the Mound facility and up at West Valley many years ago. So it's good to be here with my successors. One thing I recall during my tenure with DOE was change was always happening. And I think that's reflected in our group of DOE site managers here today, as many are new to the position that they're in. But they're very well seasoned and knowledgeable managers and leaders at their respective sites and how to mitigate the risks that are inherent in those facilities and how to conduct the cleanup work effectively. So the game plan here today is I'll briefly introduce each one of the site managers. And then I'll ask them to make opening remarks, just a couple of minutes or so, to introduce themselves and their site, with a focus on what they see as the major challenges at their facilities and how industries and communities can assist them in the performance of their duties, and what are the major opportunities at their site to contribute to the DOE's broader mission. So then I'll go through a set of prepared questions. And if there's any questions in the audience and I see somebody up there, we'll break for that. But I've got a set of questions that I'll ask the managers. And I'll target 2 managers per question. And it'll be kind of tailored based on what we know of their site and some of the things that they're involved in. But if any of the other managers have anything to add, please feel free to jump in. So in terms of introductions, we have with us here today Mark Bollinger with the Carlsbad Field Office, Nick Balsmeier with EM Idaho, Edwin Deshong with Savannah Riverside, Ray Geimer with the Hanford site, Jessica Kunkle with the Los Alamos site, Erik with Oak Ridge, and Jack Zimmerman with the EM Consolidated Business Center. So with that, we'll kind of go through our 2-minute introduction. Remember, just introduce yourself and your site, the challenges that you see at your site, as well as the opportunity to support the broader DOE mission. So let's start it down there with Mr. Balsmeier.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you. Nick Balsmeier. I'm the acting manager of the Idaho Cleanup Project. Been on site since 2008, started as a contractor, came over to DOE in 2014 when Rick was the manager. Have been with DOE since. Started my career as a USW operator and have worked my way up to this point. Kind of went into warp speed about January 20th in my career planning, but they said they needed somebody younger here, and Connie is only 27, so I'm 26. So she's 27 14 times, but I'm here because Connie and Mark gave me a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different things and set us up for success long term, even despite some of the losses we've had. So challenges for us, I would say really we don't have challenges, we have opportunities. I think the way we look at things right now with this administration, there's a lot of opportunity for us in Idaho to continue to complete cleanup missions. For us, our focus is getting waste to mark, finishing the cap. You saw earlier today some of the pictures of the ARP structures being torn down. We continue to work with NR. You saw a picture earlier of the explosive demolition of S1W. So continuing that work and then progressing on our spent nuclear fuel mission. You heard Bill Kirby just a few minutes ago talk about the Road Ready demonstration project in Calcine. Those are really our longer term missions in Idaho that we're continuing to complete to meet our Idaho settlement agreement. And then for us, the opportunity is to partner with the nuclear energy. They have their reactor demonstration program going. They've signed multiple lease agreements with companies, and we're constantly working with them on ways that EM can support that mission and continue to support the INL as a whole to continue forward. So overall, community support. We have the mayor here. We have Butte County commissioners here. So we have great community support from the local communities as well as our Citizens Advisory Board. Challenges or opportunities for us with the loss of staff. One thing that we're really looking forward to and working on is AI. How can we use AI to increase our oversight, evaluate our oversight reports, consolidate those so that we can really focus on the mission. My goal is to have less people doing oversight reports and assessments and people out in the field. Like I said, I'm an operator by trade, so it's important for me to have our staff out in the field as well as myself listening to everyone. Other opportunities, again, I kind of mentioned these, already, but just continuing the cleanup work and continuing to help any focus on meeting the executive orders.
Hi, my name is Mark Bollinger. I started with EM over 33 years ago. Been in many, many different programs and worked at many, many different sites in between, but the bookends are all EM. I do have a problem today. Last year at this time, I wanted to make things a little bit more exciting. So Jay and I from Oak Ridge used to heckle each other on stage just to create some kind of interest going on. And now Jay's gone. So I had prepared for Joel, and he's off limits. So I love Reinhard far too much. So I'm out of heckling today. So I'm gonna have to do the boring route and stick to the business at hand. So we have a lot of opportunities at WIP. One is to continue our acceleration of removing waste from Lano. Just in the last few months, we've increased it by rate over 100% and really moved forward with some corrugated metal pipe removal. And the site is poised to continue that kind of improvement and really make some progress. Another big one for us is going to be moving forward with Hanford and get them restarted moving waste. So we spend a lot of time and resources already getting them prepped and ready. And next year we'll do a number of assessments and preparations. And then the following year, hopefully we'll be moving some waste. So excited about Hanford. In the near term, we're also really focused on moving some of the riskier wastes at sites. That is the remote handled waste. And so we're talking about shielded container assemblies. We have a number of purchases for those out now, and we will get those distributed to all the sites and be able to take some of those remote handled waste and allow us to handle them as contact handled and get them in the ground at WIP. That'll be a big risk reduction for everybody and a cost avoidance in terms of storage. As we've made so much progress in the cleanup, we're getting now to tougher and tougher waste streams that have more problematic issues. And so we have opportunities on every waste stream now to get through those tough ones, figure those out, and move forward with their disposal. And really our opportunity through our infrastructure efforts is to set WIP up for decades of future waste emplacement. We have the capacity through the Land Withdrawal Act. We've made huge progress on our infrastructure. With a little bit more progress on our hoisting, we'll be poised for decades to come.
Edwin Deshong, DOE Savannah River. This is next year will be my 34th year with the department. Spent about 15 years with NNSA back and forth and most with EM. I've worked at multiple facilities across the complex and basically a ConOps operations kind of guy. Right now, Savannah River site is, I mentioned earlier this morning, celebrating the 75th anniversary of supporting the United States. Particularly right now, Savannah River has 3 tremendous partners. Battelle Savannah River Alliance, who is tremendous, and you saw the presentation this morning by Dr. Green, but they're integrated into every aspect of the work that's done at Savannah River as well as across the complex. Very proud of them. Next is Savannah River Mission Completion. They're responsible for our liquid waste execution of removing waste from the tanks. You heard Dr. Burns, but they're doing a tremendous amount of work, making tremendous progress. And he put it in perspective since they've taken over the contract. They've closed a lot of tanks. They've partnered with the regulators to get the agreements, and they've really got a good stride going, Dr. Burns and his team. And we're just really excited about what they're doing. They're sharing information with the community about what they're doing, and it's a good news story that when we tell the community, hey, we've closed this amount of tanks in this period, and this is what it means to you. It's stabilized, it's gone, those kind of things. So there's really a lot of great work being done by them. And then Savannah River Nuclear Solutions, it's a M&O that we share with the National Nuclear Security Administration. And they're doing a tremendous amount of work as well in our nuclear materials stabilization organization, led by Tony Polk. They're doing accelerated basin de-inventory. We're making a tremendous amount of shipments to WIP. And when you make that goal of 425, I do want some credit, when you do achieve it. But but they're doing a tremendous job, L area, accelerating environmental cleanup. So I'm just really happy about what's happening at Savannah River site. One of the things, when we talk about challenges, so right now, Savannah River has about 13,400 employees averaging. A significant amount of those are eligible to retire. And so we're managing that bow wave. And with that, we're bringing in new folks, but these are the folks that are 0 to 5 years. And so the primary thing is they haven't been exposed to the nuclear culture. Being in the line of fire, hazardous energy control, conduct of operations, following procedures, the things that keep you safe. And so, you saw the Secretary of Energy issue about a month ago, a letter about safety, a lot of hand injuries, those kind of things. And these are young folks that just haven't had the culture of, hey, you're not at home in your backyard taking risks. This is a prescribed, disciplined way of doing work every time to keep you, your coworkers safe, and to protect equipment and facilities and the environment. So my number one concern is as we integrate new personnel to the system, you've got to ensure that they're partnered with a seasoned person to say, hey, I know it looks easy and simple, but these are the risks. This is why we do it this way, and you do it this way every time, or you use this procedure. They need to be mentored to be able to be successful. And so some of the challenges, with that is we've got some competitors in the area. We've got some local nuclear plants. I know Robbie Bennett talked about the new data centers being built in Aiken County. Was an $800 million investment. And so many of the skilled trades are flocking from Savannah River to help build this new thing. And we get into a bidding war for talent for welders and craft workers. So those are the kind of things that we're dealing with right now. And so my goal is to partner with the community to get the pipelines, to bring in new people, to make sure we've got the infrastructure to help them get trained and to retain them for a number of years, and then work with our corporate partners to establish a robust contractor assurance system. We don't have the ability to do transactional oversight. We've lost a lot of talent, but we can still function. And what I'll say is this past year, even though the feds have gone through a transition, our corporate partners have knocked it out of the park. They were not affected. They were able to continue. We had the infrastructure in place to make sure they were able to function, but mainly they were able to get the job done. And so I was really excited about that. So my number one risk is ensuring the sustainability of performance by bringing in talented folks, making sure they get the training and the culture and the discipline to be able to meet these missions going forward. So Thank you.
My name is Ray Geimer. I'm the manager of the Hanford field office, and I've had that job now for 16 days, 4 hours and 2 minutes. I'm still learning a lot about what it means to be on this side, but I'm certainly no stranger to EM. I've been in the EM world for about 40 years now. Seems like only yesterday, but I've been all over the complex. I've spent, well, first of all, let me talk about just recently I came from the 222S laboratory, and not just even a month ago, Brian Harkins, who's back there, was the acting manager of the Hanford field office, and Brian was telling me how much I needed to improve my program and how poor my performance was and so forth. And so I'll just tell you this is, and be careful as you go forward and who you're talking to, because you never know who your next boss is going to be. So I kid, of course. Brian did a great job taking care of the office over the last 6 months or so while I could get in place. So it's been great working with Brian. He's been wonderful to work with. He's my deputy now. And so we're looking forward to forging that relationship. What I'd like to think that I can bring is my experiences from the other sites that I've worked at. Rick and I worked together at Idaho on the IWT project for a number of years. That was an interesting experience. It took 4 years away from my life, but it was good. It was a fantastic experience getting that thing built. The West Valley demonstration project, I spent 4 years there. We got the high-level waste canisters out, working with Heatherly Dukes on that. And then what probably something that I'm most proud of was what Rocky Flats, where I was in charge of all the waste disposition operation at Rocky Flats. And so I was literally the last guy to leave Rocky Flats when the last waste canister rolled out of the gate. And that was just a wonderful experience in my career. I'm glad to have had an opportunity to be part of. So I've been to Hanford now for 10 years, and I'm just as excited about what's possible at Hanford. We're, I think, at the dawning of a new era at Hanford, a new challenge, a new phase that we're going to move into. And I'm super excited, to be leading that. I'm humbled that I've been given the opportunity to lead that. So I hope I can just bear up to the expectations, but we've got some really great things going on. It's the most exciting thing, as I'm sure everybody's aware of, is we're going to be vitrifying waste at Hanford after how many years? 25 years? Yeah. So everything's lined up. We got, we're in the final stages of getting the melters all prepared. We've done a set of environmental test burns on one of the melters. We're getting ready to do the environmental test runs on the second melters. We're getting ready to get the permits issued. We should even get those this week. So that'll be good, and one step closer, and we should be feeding waste into that melter in about a week and a half or so. So exciting times. I was out at the plant a week ago, Friday. I spent half a day out there with those folks. Truly a cool facility. I've got a background in this kind of technology, so I just had a ball walking through that plant, seeing all the good stuff in there. The folks are ready. You can tell they're energized. If you've ever been part of a program where you've been working so hard and so long to make something happen, and you're that close to making something great happen, it's such a wonderful feeling. And so the energy is just really huge out there right now, and it's great to see. And then, there's things to do beyond that too. We've got more projects that we're getting lined up. We're getting ready to start moving cesium canisters out of the pool there at B plant. So that at the Westa facility, that's huge. For those of you that don't know, about 60% of the activity at Hanford is contained in those cesium capsules that we were storing in an underwater pool. We'll move those out to dry storage. That's a project that's been about 10 years in the making to get ready to move those out. We should be moving those out as early as November. So that's another huge accomplishment about ready to happen. We're getting ready to stand up a true waste program. So it's been kind of in atrophy for a while, and that's going to be an exciting time. We got lots of waste we need to move off site, and we're looking forward to getting that program working with Mark and getting things stood up to do that. And then on top of all that, we've got a new holistic agreement that we've been able to negotiate, and we're going to be moving towards a grout treatment operation for some fraction of the tank waste too. So we'll be doing vitrification work, we'll be doing grouting work, we'll be doing transuranic work. We're going to be moving a lot of waste off site in the near future here at Hanford, and that's an exciting thing to see and to be prepared for. And like I said, I hope I'm up to the challenge. Thanks.
Sounds like you've been the manager for 16 years, not 16 days. Good job.
Thanks.
Okay, Reinhard.
Thank you. So I'm Reinhard Knerr. I'm acting for Joel while he is up at headquarters and acting EM1. I've got over 30 years experience in the nuclear industry. Started my career as a nuclear criticality safety engineer out at Pantex plant. I've made my way around the DOE complex. So I've been at a variety of different sites, mostly on the East Coast or Midwest. And, so I'm happy to be, at PPPO. We've got a fantastic mission. So essentially, we're tearing down the 2 uranium gaseous diffusion plants located, one at Portsmouth site and the other at the Paducah site. And we're also converting a lot of the depleted uranium hexafluoride that we have at those facilities. The work is going great. So I'd say, at Portsmouth, we're right in the middle of the throes of it. So we're just chopping wood, we're taking buildings down. We're also excavating soil and putting waste in an on-site disposal facility. At Paducah, we are on the very edge of making some very critical decisions. We've made some efforts to consolidate the number of records of decision that we have. So we actually had about 50 or so on the books to stretch out over a 25-year period. We've got those broken down to now there will be 5. One we've already taken care of about a year ago, and then the next 3 major ones we hope to get regulatory approval in the next few years, and then we'll be chopping wood at Paducah as well. All of that really has to do with the positive working relationships we have with Ohio EPA up at Portsmouth, and then Kentucky and US EPA down at Paducah. And so those relationships have been very critical from the perspective of moving those projects along, where everybody is aligned with a vision and understands what the end goal of that is. That's on the one side of things. On the other side of things, I kind of feel like we've got a yard sale going on. All the property is disappearing, get it while you can. We have folks who are lining up of interest for AI data centers, uranium enrichment activities, reactors and other technologies, all of which are locating at our 2 facilities. So we've had some very successful interaction with the community because of that. I think, there was 2 critical components associated with how we interact with the community. When I was at Paducah 10, 15, 20 years ago, I think the mindset of the community is, DOE, what businesses are you going to bring in, and how are you going to reindustrialize the site? That mind shift has changed. They are actually bringing in businesses and groups who want to take advantage of the infrastructure and resources that we have available and are no longer necessary for the DOE mission. And that's allowed us to leverage the community interest and effort to make property and materials available for beneficial reuse. And the side benefit of that is it actually helps drive and accelerate the cleanup of the sites. If the community is clamoring to have the property back, there's business willing to invest in the site and in that property. We've got to hurry up and figure out how to get out of the way and get that property turned back over to them safely and compliantly. And so that's part of what we're going through today. And, we expect to continue to make aggressive and good decisions with regard to how we're executing that work and providing property back to the local communities.
Thank you. Jessica?
All right. Hello. Thanks, everyone. I'm Jessica Kunkle. I'm the manager for EM Los Alamos. When I was here last year, I had been here for about 2 months, and I've had an opportunity to learn a lot because prior to joining EMLA, I had actually been with NNSA for about 15 years. So the jump from NNSA to EM was, as I like to call it, comfortably outside my comfort zone, but the EM community is just so warm and welcoming that I decided to stick around and come back for more. So I just want to say, huge thank you to everybody here. At EMLA, we've got a number of focus areas and are making great progress in all three of them. First and foremost is our environmental remediation programs focused on water and soil remediation. We've got a very robust sampling and monitoring program that we operate all across the Los Alamos National Laboratory area. And I'm happy to share that of about 1,400 sites that are currently under our consent order, we've completed remediation and received certificates of completion for nearly 40% of those sites, which is amazing. But not unlike many of the other EM sites, we've tackled the lowest hanging fruit first. And so we do have some big challenges ahead of us and some big things that we will have to be tackling, sort of more through a strategic and intentional planned approach, which we will be starting to, sort of think through as we move past some of our current activities now. Another big focus area for us is our legacy transuranic waste program. Right now, we've got an inventory of just over 2,500 containers that are within our legacy inventory, which is actually quite impressive because since May of 2000, we've actually shipped more than 20,000 containers down to the WIP, which is an amazing accomplishment. But now what we have is we've got a combination of what I'll call some relatively easy waste. And by the way, I need to give a shout out to Mark because I feel like I owe him for campaigning on the corrugated metal pipe project for us. So thank you, Mark. I didn't pay him, but I will be later. But that's going to be what I'll say is perhaps the easiest portion of our true inventory that we have right now, because what we're actually finding is that's characterizing out and certifying for shipment a lot faster than the rest of our legacy waste. The other legacy waste that we have in our inventory is comprised of multiple waste streams, many of them quite a bit more complex to get through that characterization process. And so those waste streams take about, anywhere from 8 to 12 months. And so prior to having retrieved and size reduced those corrugated metal pipes, we were very much in a sort of a just-in-time shipping mode where we were inventory constrained and just shipping as we had waste available to ship. But now I'm happy to say that we actually have a backlog, as you heard Brad Smith mention. And so we're actually really excited that we've been able to increase our shipments and are hoping that we can continue to work with Carlsbad and Los Alamos National Laboratory to increase our throughput for getting some waste shipments off the site. I'm also really excited because I've challenged Brad Smith and the N3B team to start thinking about what can we do with our remaining waste streams, because we cannot just focus on the easy stuff. The corrugated metal pipes is going to be what I'm going to say sort of a foundation that we can build from every single year. And so one thing that we're sort of thinking about is what can we potentially do to strategize and perhaps get ahead of some of the WIP outages that are coming up so that we can continue to still tackle the waste that we have in our waste inventory while also reducing our transuranic waste inventory. And so we're actually coming up with a strategy, and I really want to give credit to Brad's team because they've actually come up with a strategy to implement a campaign to address our empty containers, where we're going to actually recharacterize those as low-level waste and pack them up with other low-level waste and ship them off-site. And that our plan is to continue to do that even while the WIP is down so that we can continue to reduce our true inventory, but recharacterizing as low-level waste, which is really important because we know that the WIP has, really a national asset and it has limited capacity. Although we did hear Mark say it's got enough capacity for everybody, which is good, but we want to make sure we're sending only the waste that needs to go to the WIP to WIP. So that's our goal. And then we've got a couple other, things in our environmental remediation space that I should mention. We do have a hexavalent chromium plume that we're working to address. We've made a lot of great progress working with the state and the local communities over the last decade or so. And that is a huge area. I mean, all of our cleanup areas, but that one in particular is one of the biggest areas where we are looking to make sure that we're pulling in our local government and community and Pueblo stakeholders for involvement to discuss priorities and objectives on how we actually move forward. And as far as potential sort of reuse opportunities, our site is perhaps slightly different, although not necessarily unique within the EM complex. But one of the things that we're really focused on is making sure that we have tight integration with NNSA as we are a tenant on their site, and really making sure that we avoid any potential disruption to their critical national security mission. And so that is a component that we keep in mind as we plan and execute our work. Not unlike many of the other sites, but definitely something that is sort of front of mind when we're executing our work.
Yep, thank you. Erik Owens.
Well, everything's good at Oak Ridge, Rick, so. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Erik Olds. I'm the manager of the Oak Ridge Office of Environmental Management. I feel like I should say I've worked for DOE for 50 years, given everyone on the panel, but it's only been about 33. I started my time with the department at Yucca Mountain, if anyone remembers that project. And like a lot of folks here on the panel with me, my peers, I've worked all over the DOE complex. Mostly at Hanford. I worked with Ray and a number of other folks, and I was at the Nevada test site when it was still called the Nevada test site. So I'll go ahead and call it that. And also DOE headquarters. So I feel like I've had the ability to get both the headquarters and the field perspectives in my time at the department, which I found very, very beneficial. I'm sure a lot of you, most of you, sat through the Oak Ridge panel this morning, so I don't think I need to go through as much detail and overview on Oak Ridge itself, but I'll jump ahead, and I know we'll talk a lot about challenges and opportunities during this panel itself. But for challenges, I'm going to say people. I did make this point this morning on the panel about Oak Ridge. In not too many years, or even just a few years from now, or even next year, there's going to be a lot more different people sitting in these chairs, right? More people are coming into our industry. That's a good thing. But they are younger and they have different skill sets, or no skill set, right? And they're learning and developing as they go. A lot of what we do in our positions, especially I think the field managers, there's a lot of relationship activities and relationship building that we have to do. It's working with stakeholders, it's working with communities, it's working with regulators, it's working with each other at our sites and people in Washington, D.C. at headquarters. And those are really critical skills to learn. So I think we can teach people their jobs, but we also need to be teaching them the skills at the same time and really getting that next generation of people ready to lead in our industry. For opportunities, I would say some of the same things that you've already heard on the panel, and I know we'll certainly talked about it this morning on the panel, which is more cleanup. Cleanup at Oak Ridge is the engine that drives redevelopment, and that gives us the opportunity and the ability to give cleaned up lands back to either NNSA or science for federal missions and to the community for commercial missions. So the opportunities are ahead, more cleanup, more reindustrialization.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thanks. So I'm Jack Zimmerman. I was told after this morning's session, I'm pretty when I smile. So I will try to do a better job of that. And hopefully give you something better to look at, right? But like a lot of these other panel members, you know, I've been involved in the industry for a long time. I've got about 40 plus years total experience. My first 10 was more in the commercial nuclear power startup side of things. But for the last 30 years, I've worked for the Department of Energy, EM. And I did make a list of all the sites, but I'm not going to list them off. But I've worked, you know, in one way or another, probably at every single, you know, EM site, but had some leadership roles at about 16 total sites, and 4 of them are closed already. In my role as the director of CBC, we provide, you know, line management execution services for all of the sites where there's not a large EM presence. So right now we've got about 11 total sites under us. Most of them are kind of smaller and they range in size, but it gives us a whole wide range of opportunities and challenges. And so I do want to say for those sites, out of those 11, we've got a plan to close 9 of them within the next 10 years. And those are executable. We've got executable plans to close those 9 sites. And I'm throwing some of the naval reactor support work into that list. We've developed a partnership with Naval Reactors at 3 of their sites. Idaho's got the lead for where they're at, but at the 3 sites that did not have an EM presence, we've taken over those sites with their liabilities and ours completely funding those activities. So we're providing a business service in that regard. And I think, between Idaho and us, you'll find that I think we're doing a pretty good job in those areas in order. So in other words, Naval Reactors has their way of doing things, and we're delivering value with the way EM approaches that kind of work. And that's where our expertise is. And I think we will continue to show that value. Now, looking at some of the opportunities, some of the major opportunities in the next 1 to 3 years, you heard West Valley. I mean, that was a success story for today. But looking forward, Moab is probably our next large site. That's in Moab, Utah. That was a former uranium processing facility. The biggest part of that cleanup was probably the tailings pile that sat there. That pile was 130 acres and 90 feet tall. And we took our last scoop off of it already. So that pile this month is complete. And we're within the next 3 years, we've got plans to close the site completely and be done with that and turn it back over to the community for reuse. I mean, that's the ideal path, but like they said, there's all kinds of opportunities that land could be used for. The other sites where we've got the path, to closure, like Livermore, Naval Reactors, they all have plans to use that space. So as we're taking down, these excess nuclear facilities, and most of those are national security related missions. They've already got plans. I think in the case of Lawrence Livermore, they've actually already started projects on some of the lands of the buildings that we've taken down over the last couple of years. So it's a very important, that we continue to make progress in eliminating those excess facilities. It lets those footprints get repurposed for other things. And like I said, for us, primarily that's national security related missions at most of those sites. When it comes to the challenges, like I said, there's a couple sites that are kind of stuck. I think, and most of those challenges deal with basically waste disposition. At the West Valley demonstration project, because that is a commercial activity and it's not defense, there's basically waste that's orphaned, for lack of a better term. So we've got to find solutions for that. There's no easy solution for it. I mean, it could be a regulatory solution. There could be some other, perhaps more technical solutions on whether or not it really is defense versus non-defense. But, we're not going to get into that. But the things where, the community can really help is really, recognizing that, it's going to take some actions outside of EM to find those solutions. So just continue working with us at the site, work with your representatives to make sure they understand the issues. And we'll see if eventually, we can get to a solution that removes that barrier from completing West Valley. Another one that's I'll highlight, it's an opportunity, it's a challenge, and it's a collaboration, but it's SPRU. I think everybody's probably heard of SPRU. They had a little bit of an issue up there in the final stages of the cleanup, but the cleanup's been done for about 5 years now, but we've been left with some waste that was orphaned up there. Essentially transuranic-like waste at a site that didn't have capabilities to really deal with it. So it's been in storage for 5 years. We've worked a number of potential solutions, and I think we now have one. And really, Erik has helped us out tremendously in Oak Ridge, but we've got a path to get that waste to Oak Ridge that they can process it at TWPC using existing facilities and saving a considerable amount of money for the taxpayer and delivering value. And, that's just an opportunity challenge that, like I said, we collaborated on, and it was even started before Erik. I mean, Jay and I worked on it for a long time. Erik delivered. I'll leave it at that. But he worked with his community and he worked with his regulator. I mean, it wouldn't have been a success without what we've had from the Oak Ridge community support and the TDEC, support that they had with the agreement in principle that was just signed a few months ago. So I think, anyway, those are some examples for me. Thanks.
I will let Jay know that Erik delivered.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think, to me, the takeaway from that is during this time of change that I talked about earlier, this is very reassuring to me anyhow, hopefully to you as well, that we have a set of DOE site managers at each one of our facilities that are seasoned leaders, and they fully understand the challenges and opportunities that exist at the site. So thanks for sharing your perspectives with us. So we'll get into the specific questions now. The first one, I'll point to Reinhard, Knerr, and Erik, and it has to do with the prior panel when they were here talking about AI and data centers and things like that. They talked a lot about trying to site these things at DOE facilities. And we know there are two of those facilities that they were citing specifically. One is at Portsmouth, Paducah project office area, and the other is at Oak Ridge. So the first question goes to Reinhard and Erik. So one of the major themes we have seen so far this year from DOE and EM is a concerted focus on making remediated land and assets available for beneficial reuse to help DOE achieve its energy, innovation, and national security goals. How is the shift impacting your site operations, and how do you balance that with the current cleanup challenges? Reinhard?
Sure, thank you. You know, I look at it as an advantage to us. You know, having outside industry wanting to come to the sites and utilize, you know, some of the infrastructure that we have that we would likely have had to D&D or remove, allows us to work a little more efficiently. I think additionally, it drives the acceleration of the cleanup. You know, there's when you've got somebody knocking at the door wanting a parcel of property, it allows us to stay focused and see what we can do to get that property ready to go. You know, it's not an easy task to go through that process, but it does allow us to stay focused, and it's a reminder of, you know, why we're doing the mission we're doing, right? You know, we're getting these 1950s facilities down on the ground. We're removing the contamination that was left behind for, you know, 60 plus years of operations, and we're providing that property back to beneficial reuse in the communities. And you know, that, and then you kind of pair it with, you know, the current administration's need for energy as well as AI technologies. I think it's a win-win, and, you know, provides us synergies that we need to be successful.
Well said. That was very good. And I completely agree with Reinhard. I mean, it's kind of a good problem to have in a way, because that the additional focus on whether it be national defense or AI data centers, energy, it has certainly created more of a driver and impetus to get cleanup done quickly and do something with those lands or even other materials that may be available for beneficial reuse. I think if there's a challenge there from an Oak Ridge perspective is I think Oak Ridge in many ways was a pioneer when it comes to reindustrialization. As cleanup was happening out on the west end of the site in K25, you know, there were thoughts back in the 1990s about turning over those cleaned up lands back to the community for reindustrialization. And so it's been something that's been going on for a long time at Oak Ridge, and so long that from an EM perspective, we're actually getting down to some of the remaining land that we have on site that EM can actually turn over to the community. And as Reinhard said, there is a bit of a land rush going on right now for federal lands and how those lands can be reused. So we may reach a point, you know, somewhere in there when we are going to have less available land, at least from an EM perspective. Now, I think that's going to create a broader discussion at Oak Ridge because Office of Science is actually the landlord for the site there, and there are other lands available. And so I think we are just at the front end of a broader discussion with other DOE programs and the community about what's going to occur with those remaining lands, which is a good discussion to have. I'm glad we're at the point we're having it. In an interesting way too, I think it's also changed the dialogue with the community, because now communities aren't just looking at the end of DOE missions at their sites and what they're going to do. I mean, they are actively redeveloping on these lands, right? Out at Oak Ridge, we have businesses coming in, the Kairoses and the X-Energies, and they are building facilities. They are preparing for their industry there. And so now our community is really beginning to think about what they look like. I mean, is there going to be housing for all of those people that are coming? Are there going to be schools? What are the conditions of the roads? And so they're thinking about land use in a very different way now too, which is, again, it's a good problem to have. I'm glad we're part of that dialogue with the community. But we've got a ways to go, I think, in that discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, next question will go to Jessica Kunkle and Mark Bollinger. We're now seeing a new emphasis in DOE on EM and EM on efficiency, innovation, and streamlining. In short, working to run EM more like a business. Actually, I remember that back when I was working with DOE. How are you carrying this out in your site operations? What's working at your site and what could be improved, and how are you ensuring effective oversight? We may want to hear from Nick a little bit on his plan to use AI in performing more effective oversight as well. So if you can think about that a little bit, Nick. Okay, Jessica?
That was a lot of questions, so I'm going to focus on that first one. But no, your point about efficiencies and innovation, I think being a focus for DOE for a number of years is spot on. And I think one of the things that we are just looking at now is, how do we take that to the next level? And so how do I see that applying at EM Los Alamos? One of the things that I am particularly looking to do is, as we have, I mentioned earlier, as we've tackled the low-hanging fruit and are now moving to more of the complex work that we have remaining, it's really trying to come up with a process and a method to make sure that we have robust planning in place to appropriately do risk trade-off and analysis to make sure that we are tackling the right things, but also make sure that the things that we're tackling, we can actually complete in a timely manner. Because one of the things that I think is important is to not just be working on something, but delivering something. And so it's very important to not get spread too thin, because we do still have so much cleanup work that remains. Really just make sure that we're focusing on the right thing and think about how can we increase our return on investment for the dollars that we do have. So, and what I think of return on investment, to me, that's really risk reduction, which I don't think is unlike a lot of the processes and procedures that the other sites already have in place. But that's one of the big focus areas that me and my team working with N3B are really focused on, because, we are looking to, do more with less, which I think is always something that we're always challenged to do. Regardless of the year, regardless of the environment, it's just the nature of government. We always try to refine how we're doing, what we're doing, and also looking to make sure that we're maximizing our results. And so I think what I'm really focused on is just taking what has been started at EMLA and just sort of continuing to refine and iterate on what has been there and look for ways to increase the results that we can deliver for the public.
Thank you. Mark?
So we have a unique challenge in the world. We run a DOE nuclear facility and a mine, and those two worlds do not meet anywhere else. And so Ken and his team at Simcoe have a tremendous challenge to look at how you do things both safely and very effectively and cost efficiently. So we're looking at a lot of things in a number of areas. So on the mining side, for example, we can benchmark a little bit with the industry near us. In the potash mines, we can look at some of the ways that they do business. For example, we found out that they upgrade their control systems on their hoist roughly every 10 years or so. Ours have never been upgraded. So we are in the process of doing that and replacing some of those. We're bringing modernization to the mining, really to bring safety and efficiency. This next year's contract will include incentives for Simcoe to purchase and procure, for example, equipment that is much more modern than what we've traditionally used and would put the the workers in a much more safer environment by using more modern equipment. We've done a lot with robotics. To this point, we can actually operate robotics from the surface and go down into the ground, maneuver through our big air doors, using those robotics and be able to bring sensors and equipment to the underground. What we'd like to do is continue that development with headquarters support from the tech development and keep looking at ways we can use those systems to help us in recovery efforts, in safety efforts, in mine safety efforts, and really advance where we are. Ken and his team are looking at panel 11. Those of you know what we do in salt. Salt immediately starts to close back in as soon as you open it up. So the way we mine out panel 11, if you mine out the room that you will use last, you're sort of doing it in the wrong order. So we're working on a way to mine out the area that will need to close first. That will be much more efficient. One of the big improvements, we're now using 90% what are called cable bolts, which are a different sort of bolt in the that you secure the salt with, because it has higher tensile strength and will last much longer and be much more effective and efficient. So Ken and his team are doing a really good job of challenging this is the way we've always done it and looking for new opportunities. Interesting story, since Nick is sitting next to me. A few years ago, we had a young man who was actually Nick's dad suggest that we needed to look at WIP 2.0. He was very excited about a WIP 2.0 and had an entire system of upgraded systems throughout the mine and how we would do business in the future. I kind of had to break his heart poolside one day when I said, we're not going to be able to jump to WIP 2.0 in the next few years, but these are wonderful ideas that we can start to implement piece by piece over time. And I think we're starting down that path. Thanks.
Thank you. Nick?
Well, I'd like to retract my statement because I was 12 when all these people started. But as Mark said, my dad's been in the business for 50 years, so love it or hate it, Brad, you got another Balsmeier, the families are coming up. But for us, AI, we've used it in a lot of ways. One thing we did just recently, my assistant manager for ops, we had some of our friends from the defense board come out, looked at our CAS system, and we took our CAS system, we call it Zeus, and loaded in basically all of our FR assessment reports to look for trends, do trend analysis, because we don't have the people where we can just say, hey, Rick, what happened, 25 years ago at RWMC, and have somebody that can just tell you about the history of that. So we're using that for trending. We're also implementing it, when we transitioned the contract, Callie's back there, IEC brought in some AI systems for project management to evaluate project management. They actually had a system that pulled out basically every deliverable from the contract when they came in, gave dates to it. So we're looking at it as ways to be more efficient for us with less people, the less time we have to search for stuff, and we can at least get a good data set, then that we can go in the field and confirm. It's working good so far.
Impressive. Yeah, Nick, remember back when I was there at DOE, he brought electronic iPads to all the facility reps out in the field, which was kind of a step up from, the way we used to do business, but it really improved their efficiency back then. Great to see that he's advancing that to pursuing the benefits of AI as well. Let's see, next question will go to Mr. Zimmerman. So as EM thinks differently about how to do work, what does the role of the EM CBC look like? Okay.
Yeah, I think, we continue our role. I mean, for those that don't know, I mean, the CBC really does everything execution wise, for headquarters. So they keep the policy in Washington, DC. We provide the execution type services. As we need to get more efficient, we look at, we need to continue to look at opportunities to improve that efficiency, whether there's, efficiencies in consolidation or scale, things like that, whether it's a budget service or a finance service. We're already responsible for all the pre-award acquisition. So we've really honed our efficiencies in that area. We've been able to kind of streamline, standardize our basically our template and process for putting out the end state contract model. And we've gotten that process down to about an 18-month cycle. Prior to that, it was 36 months, wasn't unheard of. So we've already made a number of efficiencies. And I think we got to continue to provide, support. We've got a lot of the smaller sites. We also provide some support to some of the larger sites for things where it doesn't make sense for them to have a one-off. So, like employee concerns is perhaps an example of that, where one person covers multiple sites and can provide a service under one program instead of creating, 2, 3, 4 different programs. So we see efficiencies along those ways. And the other thing we're looking at, we've already done some of this in collaboration space, just creating kind of regional support, between, Oak Ridge, Cincinnati, and Lexington, for example, for PPPO. And we've also are taking that a step further and developing a tool where we will be able to collect all of the special skills that we have in the federal workforce. So if there's a niche that somebody needs, we'll be able to find that and be able to use that, share that resource. I think you kind of heard it a little bit with Carroll Johnson when they found somebody that knew this lead process that came from Amazon internally. So we're trying to develop a tool that will make it easy, for EM to identify those kinds of, resource and need matches so that we can be as efficient as possible going forward.
Good. Thank you, Jack. So the next question will go to Ray Geimer and Edwin Deshong. Are you working with your fellow sites to share lessons learned and tackle challenges? What's been successful and what could be done to help improve cross-site collaboration across EM? Go to Ray first.
So we've actually, kind of in a way coming up behind a lot of other sites, had the opportunity to learn a lot from what we've gotten from other sites. For instance, our tank side cesium removal process, we sort of copied Savannah River's model on that. So, that's a huge benefit, being able to, tag off of that and learn from that. And so we get that up running and moving faster. The canister or the capsules, the cesium capsules that were moving out of the Wesif building, we actually got equipment from West Valley that they used to move the high-level waste canisters out of there. So we've done a lot to try to reach out to other sites and learn from what we can from those folks and get what we can. And I think we're gonna, we're already talking with Mark about TRU stuff. I was talking with my TRU team the other day. We're going to head over to Idaho, and they've been in this thing for a while now. We're going to learn from them. What lessons do they have that we, so we don't go make the same kind of mistakes. Maybe not that they made any mistakes. I'm sure they didn't make any mistakes. Yeah. All right. So anyway, we can learn from them. What works good, right? What are some good practices? And so that's so that'll be good. So. Anyway, yeah, I think it's important that we all work together and one of the benefits, like I said, I've been at a lot of different sites, so I know a lot of folks at a lot of different sites, and I think that's huge. You got to go learn from each other and cooperate with each other.
Good. Thank you. Edwin?
Yeah, I echo what he just shared. One of the prime examples that Carroll Johnson and Dr. Burns talked about was a partnership between Hanford and Savannah River on the liquid waste mission, and how they're very similar. And I would always hear and see, different things shared between the sites. They would come visit us, or we'd go there, but that's one prime example. Another one I want to relate in relations to, I'd like to see more use of it. And it came from Jack's shop and Aaron Deckard, is the use of the end state contract model. We've implemented that for the liquid waste mission, and it's been tremendous. It's a streamlined process, oriented by task orders, and the way it couples work, when you set it up, it's a little different, but at the end of the day, it's a success story. I think many of our newer contracts should benefit from. And Jack, feel free to jump in if I'm selling it short, but the end state contract model is significant. We participate in the workshops for that. really share how it's going. Our contract is a $26 billion contract with SRMC to 2036, 2037-ish. But the way it was structured, the way it's set up really set us up for success. That's one big one. But as far as other lessons learned, some of the things we're going to have to do is, site managers is share, resources, as far as if they need a safety basis professional or FR to come cover a unique evolution and they're short or we're short in a resource area, those kind of things are some of the things we have to share to really help us get across the hump until we're able to get fully staffed and get those technical expertises back. And also, sharing how we partner with our corporate partners to implement the contractor assurance system. As I talked about earlier, we don't have the ability to do transactional oversight. If our partners, let's say Janice Lawson and his folks are looking at something in the K area or L area, and they've got an assessment plan that maps what the FR would look at, why have him do one and they do one when they could either participate, shadow, and benefit? And so those are the kind of things we want to share with other sites on how we can partner with our folks to really get the work done. The goal is to ensure oversight, that the work is done per the requirements, they're safe, and they're making progress. So those are just a couple of examples. Don't have a whole lot there, but want to share that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, if I could, I'll jump in just quickly on the point Edwin was making. The end state contract, I think, has been a great tool. Like I said, we've kind of standardized the template on that and how it's used, but also as part of that, we have incorporated lessons learned from every evolution of those contracts that we've awarded. And so Edwin, likes it so much because he's got one of the more recent awards. If you got one of the earlier rewards, then, there were certain mistakes that we made with the first generation that we've improved each generation through. But again, it's just, we're making it better each round. So thanks.
Very good. Okay, now we'll focus on the people a little bit. We'll go to Mark Bollinger and Jessica Kunkle. As we have seen broader changes and shifts throughout DOE over the past year, how do you maintain morale and adjust culture to better operate in this new environment? Jessica?
Yeah, I think one of the things that many of us in the room have heard many times is that the only constant is change. And so I think, regardless of the change, this is a challenge that each of the managers on this stage have signed up for. So to me, this isn't unlike any other working environment. Yeah, we may have different pressures, but part of our role as managers is to just maintain the morale and make sure that we're able to keep the productivity of our teams optimized so that we can continue to deliver results. For me, what I really focus on is the human factor of that. You have to actually engage with your people, be in touch with your people, get the sense of what they're going through, and really make sure that we can provide them whatever grace that they may need right now. A lot of our sites, I know many of our sites were not immune to the losses of some federal employees. And so you just heard Edwin about how can we band together to help each of the sites out, which I think is a great opportunity. But I think also just recognizing that we perhaps cannot do everything and give our staff some grace and flexibility when that does happen. But also think about what additional guidance or support can we provide to them for them to be effective. And so you heard Edwin mention perhaps it's partnering or resource sharing between the EM offices. But I also think that there's truth in, this is perhaps a forcing function for us to look at what we're doing and how we're doing what we're doing and making some really important changes. I think one of the things that we can potentially start doing is doing less, really think about, is there a driver for why we're doing this? And if not, is it something we can stop doing? And those can be hard conversations for managers to have, but I think it's important that, this perhaps be sort of a driver for us to start having those conversations on a regular and recurring basis with our staff to make sure that we can manage workload. And then just really, focus on the people. And I think when you become a manager or a leader, you recognize that it's not about you, it's about the people, and just continuing to focus on that is, I think, the most important thing to making sure that we're able to maintain morale and productivity of the workforce.
So, to tell the story of the federal office at WIB, we've been overwhelmed for quite a long time. The Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey that we fill out had told us that one of our biggest issues, the biggest issue we had, was to bring in federal resources, and that my team was overwhelmed. So that's no secret. It's been known for a long time. We had worked really hard the previous couple of years to add almost 40% to our staff. And luckily we did that because we've lost about 40%. So is it anything new? No, it's not new to us. We've been there, we've done that. But at WIP, the mission is our passion. In that community in Southeast New Mexico, the passion for the mission of WIP is unbelievable. The people love to support the mission. They are behind the mission. They love to be able to say, we clean up America. And so those that have stuck with us have a true passion for what they do. And so even though they're overwhelmed, they carry on, and they have still have passion every day for what they do. What can I do? I can bring every resource that I can find, right, to help out. So I use our great support service contractor, Navarro, to bring in extra people where we need and to do different things. I can use Brenda and her team on a number of activities. EA at headquarters has offered a lot of resources. Just last week, there were EA folks working as an aside job in my spaces to help out with some of those activities. We have worked together as a team up on stage now to share our resources among each other, and we plan on doing a lot more of that. So we can bring a lot of things to bear, and we will have to do less with less. That is one of the things I can give, the grace that Jessica talked about. We give that grace to our people. Immediately when we lose 16 people in a day, I say, we will do less with less. We will not do the same amount. We will have to do it smarter. We will use other resources, but we will get by and we will do the best we can. And the other benefit I have that really is somewhat different from a lot of the sites, the beauty of an M&O contract, a management and operating contract, is that Ken and his team, Simcoe, is responsible for the full management and operating of that site. And so that contract allows me to put just about every responsibility on Ken that isn't a federal absolute mandatory responsibility. So using contractor assurance, the contractor assurance clauses in the contract to their fullest extent, holding Ken and his team accountable, is also a critical piece of how we have to do business going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, looking outwardly at our support network, I'll go to Ray Geimer and Jack Zimmerman. Some of DOE's structures and incentives to encourage small business inclusion have been simplified or streamlined. What do you think the opportunities will be for regional small businesses at your sites in the future? How are you working to encourage small business involvement and build partnerships with small businesses to leverage their expertise? Right?
So currently, there's a number of ways we're doing that. Personally, I believe that small businesses are really important to all of our operations. And particularly, they can bring some specialized expertise when we need it. We have, as the federal operation, we have 2 prime small business contracts. And so that's us trying to do our part. But we also emphasize that through our contracts with our other larger primes. And they have small business goals that they have to attain, and that we ask them to try to work on. And they've all been doing a very good job of that. So we commend that. And I think they've gotten good, use out of that as well. So I think it's a win-win. We got another one that we're looking at right now, a support services, kind of a GSCC type contract. We're going out with that. Looks like that's going to be a small business set aside contract. So we're doing what we can. And like I said, we believe in promoting the use of small business, and small business makes America great.
Jack?
Yep. And for the EMCBC, essentially, we are EM's corporate arm for the EM Small Business Program. So in that regard, I mean, we really show our commitment by supporting, the small business, all the small businesses. It's really guided by DOE Small Business First policy, the DOE Small Business Strategic Plan, and EM's Small Business Strategic Plan. As far as the, the opportunities for regional small businesses, I mean, first, we do look at every opportunity to set it aside for a small business first, and we maximize those requirements to the extent we can. But for those areas that aren't designated, for small businesses, we include substantive and consistent small business subcontracting requirements across all the major EM prime contracts. And that provides significant opportunities for regional small businesses existing at the tier 2 level. So that means really at the site level. And we continue to do that for all the contracts. And the movement toward the end state contracts is just going to increase that demand for the specialized regional capabilities. Now, in addition to that, we work with the Supply Chain Management Center, and that provides a common platform across all of EM, and it also supports NNSA. And they're looking at growing their utilization of EM primes, providing a streamlined avenue for small businesses to supply goods and services across the entire complex. Now, as far as, ways that we do encourage involvement and develop, build partnerships, we do a lot of reach out through the CBC. We work with ATIBA and FCOG and support their annual meetings. We facilitate roundtable discussions at a lot of those meetings, including the small business conference that's put on by DOE. And we also, have conducted reverse industry days, and we'll continue to do that, where we will have small businesses come in and tell us, what their issues are, to see if there are solutions that we can develop, either improving the process or getting the information out better. So those are the kinds of things that we've got in place.
Thank you, Jack. At this point, I'll ask if there's anybody in the audience who has any questions for our panel. Mayor Casper.
But I can just use my loud voice. I'm curious as to whether or not when you're onboarded as a field, or excuse me, as a field manager, if you are specifically told that working with the public is part of your job, or if that's just something you pick up along the way as a really smart idea. And part of the reason I'm asking that is because so much of what the Energy Communities Alliance depends upon is that healthy communication and that the partnership that results from it. And so I'm curious as to whether or not, I mean, it's serious for us, and the reason that the ECA comes together. Is it serious in terms of part of what you're paid for and evaluated upon and onboarded for, or is it mostly just, yeah, I've learned if I don't keep them happy, they're, my life's miserable? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Any volunteers to take that one on?
Since she's the mayor of Idaho Falls, I could take it.
Oh.
Seems appropriate. Yes, there's multiple DOE programs. They have the Nuclear Executive Leadership Training that I think all of us have been through. I had the benefit of just having good mentors that trained me along the way. So when I wasn't in management, Connie said, "You're coming to the cab. You're going to go do this. You're going to the nuclear cleanup workshop." And then when I took the job, again, I was exposed to a lot of meetings that she did and Mark did. I meet quarterly with the Butte County Commissioners. Obviously, we have our cab meetings. So we, through, mentorship and training as an employee, I look at that as part of the manager's job to develop their staff. And so I was lucky enough to have good managers, through really my whole DOE career that have exposed me to that. And I am the community, right? I live in Rigby. So it's important to me to have a voice out in the community because I was born in Idaho Falls. I've lived in Idaho for the majority of my life. So being in the community is just being a part of my life. I'm part of that every day. So it is very important to me. And, having those communications and keeping those lines open are, paramount to our success.
I'll go. So I've now been a DOE employee for 16 days, 5 hours and 2 minutes. And I haven't even read my performance plan fully yet. But to be serious, nobody needs to tell me that that's an important part of what we need to do. You know, it's very clear to me that we have to work with the communities, understand what the community's views are on, you know, we're good citizens of the community. We belong to the community. We are the community, and we want to, you know, be thought of as, you know, a good part of the community. So yeah, that my intention will be to spend lots of time. You know, I've already had some opportunities today to talk to the folks in the Tri-Cities area. Look forward to doing more of that. Yeah, it's a very important part of mission, and I think nobody needs to tell us that. We all know that that's really important. And I just want to point out that now that I know Nick lives in Rigby, that explains a lot. So.
If it helps you, I do have specific measures in my performance plan that talk about working with stakeholders. Yeah.
Yeah, and based on my experience, interaction with the local community, with the local tribes was a team sport within the Office of Environmental Management. We had strategy sessions on how to do that effectively between us and headquarters. The citizens advisory boards that we have at each one of our sites takes a lot of planning and a lot of involvement by each one of the staff. But what it does is build a culture within DOE such that when a guy like myself leaves, we've got a whole group of people who've been supporting that for many years. They understand the value of doing that to the things that we have to do as part of our cleanup mission. And they carry the torch forward. And I think that's what you're hearing today. So, plus it's in our performance plan. So I think that's good for today if we don't have any other questions. We're finishing on time, so that's a good thing as well. So I'd like to thank our DOE site managers for their openness today and sharing with us how they tackle things on a day-to-day basis. And you know, to me, again, it's very refreshing that we've got a high caliber team of DOE site managers in place across the EM complex. And I'd like to thank them for their leadership and their public service as well. So let's give them a great applause.